Hey guys, so in the previous video we went over conditional statements as well as the basic if statement in Java. So today we're going to dive a little bit deeper. Now right now this code is if this condition is true, right? If this number is odd, then it'll print it out. Right? But what if my number is even? Or what if this condition evaluates to be false? Right? Then nothing's going to happen. It'll just be blank. And we don't want that. We want to be able to handle if the condition is true or false. So that's where the else block comes in Java. Okay, basically, it's like if this condition is true, then do what's inside the if block. Otherwise, do what's inside the else block. Right, so in here we could maybe print out something like, your number is odd. Or I'm sorry, it'd be even. Right, so now something's happening. We're able to handle the case where the condition evaluates to false, right? And so even though the else statement is totally optional, right, your code will still compile and run even if there's no else statement, you'll find that it's best practice and very common to see if and else paired together, because you always want to be able to handle the condition being false. You don't want just nothing to happen. Cool, so now why don't we write a basic program, okay? Let's say we know that our grades are given to us in percentages. So why don't we take those grades and put them into a letter grade? So if I were to have a variable, and let's give it a value of like 85, right? Then with that, I should be able to evaluate what letter grade is it. Is it A, B, C, D, or F? So let's start writing that. Now we know if it's greater than or equal to 90, then it's going to be an A. Okay, and then if the grade is greater than or equal to 80, right, that means it's between 80 and 90, then it's going to be B. Okay, 70, it'll be C. I don't know if you're kind of catching a whiff of something being a little wrong here, but let's keep going. It will be a D. Otherwise, we know if it's anything less than a 59, it's going to be an F. Cool, so let's say it's an 85. Let's see what happens. And I'm just going to comment out these so that we don't get confused. Oh dang, it prints out B, C, and D. Okay, what if it's 95? Huh, it prints out all of them. Let's see why. Well, basically what's happening here is it's taking the grade, and the grade is greater than or equal to 90, so it's printing A. But then it's also greater than or equal to 80, so it's printing B. And then it's printing C and D because it's also greater than or equal to 70 and 60. And it's not doing the else because here this condition is true, which means it's not false, so it's not going to print out the F. Right, so in this case, it can be a little tedious. Then you have to put in ranges, and it's less than or equal to 100. You're going to have to put a bunch of ranges. Or in Java, there's also the else if statement, right? So basically, let me just add those in. And what's going to happen is, now this, think of it as like this one entity, okay? Like you have whatever's executing the code, it's going through, and it sees this first if statement, okay? And if it's true, then it'll print out this. And then it sees that the next code, the next line, starts with else if. So it knows it's not going to do that. And as long as it sees else, it's not going to execute any of them because this is already true. It's not false. So there's no reason to execute any of the rest of this code. And it'll all end up here until after the last else. Right? So kind of think back to how when we had the if else, it was like if this condition is true, then do the code, otherwise now then do whatever's inside the else, right? So it's kind of similar here, except now we're also adding an additional condition to check for, right? So like if this evaluates to false, then check this one. But if this also evaluates to false, then check this one. And if this evaluates to false, check this one. And if that's also false, then just do this. Right? And if any of these turn out to be true, like let's say my grade is 85, right? Then this is going to be true, right? Then it'll execute this code and it'll move on all the way till after the else block, right? So if I were to run this now, it would just print out B, right? Because we know 85 It's not greater than or equal to 90, so it's not an A, but it is greater than or equal to 80. So it'll print out the B, and then it'll move on all the way until after the last else. And it has to be in this order of if, else if, and then else. You can't have like an else if after an else. This should always be your last statement. It's like, okay, if nothing works, if everything is false, then this will be the last thing that we'll do. Right? So let's just try this with a bunch of other grades. Like let's say it's 75. Then it'll print C. Let's say they're 25, right? That's going to be an F. And 65, that'll be a D, right? So we know this code works. Awesome. So this is a really good thing, and you're going to be seeing a lot of if and else if and else's. They're very common in Java, and they're very fundamental. Cool. So now let's talk about the logical operators. Okay. So let's say we have some number, x, okay, and I'm going to give it a base value of 10. Let's say that this number has to be within a range, right? So it has to be between 10 and 20. For whatever reason, it has to be between 10 and 20, right? So we wouldn't want to do an if and else if kind of thing. We would want that we're having two conditions being checked and then evaluating at once, right? So that's where we have the first logical operator, and, okay? So if x is greater than or equal to 10 and it's less than or equal to 20, then maybe we'll just print it out. Okay, so let's pause for a minute. What is happening here? So this is one Boolean expression, okay? This is going to have either a true or a false, okay? And similarly, this is another Boolean expression. So this is also going to have either a true or a false, okay? So in this case, this is going to be true, and this is also going to be true. And the way AND works is what's on its left and right, whatever expressions are on its left and its right, they have to both evaluate true. Only then will this entire Boolean expression evaluate to true, right? So maybe to make this a little bit more readable, we can add some parentheses, all right? So what's happening here is this is being evaluated, this is being evaluated, and then together with this AND operator, it's checking if they're both true. And if they are, then it'll be, this whole entire expression will be true, and it'll enter the if block. Let's say x was 6, then this would be false. And immediately, this whole expression would also be false, because in order for AND to work, both of them have to be true, right? So it kind of makes sense when you think about it. And both of them have to be true. All right, the next one is OR. OR is either one of the expressions to its left or right can be true. So if this one is true, then this whole thing is going to be true. If this one is true, then the whole thing will be true. But if both of them are false, only then it'll be false, right? So again, think of it like OR, right? It can be true or false. It can be false or true. But if it's false and false, then the whole thing will be false, okay? And then the final one is NOT. And basically, think of it like if I were to put a NOT right here, then what will happen here is it'll evaluate this Boolean, right? So in this case, is 6 greater than or equal to 10? It's not. It's false. But then because I put a NOT, it switches it. So it becomes true. So this highlighted portion is actually true. And then this whole thing would become true, right? So that's what the NOT is for. So those are 3 of the logical operators, and they're also really common and useful. Awesome. So today we just learned about the if statement, the else statement, else if, and then the 3 logical operators, and, or, and not. I'll see you guys in the next video.